Hi there, welcome to the Dylan Rounds case, looking at the recent latest ongoing discussions within the community and as well orbiting around the main theme of today and what's been talked about elsewhere by questionable individuals, the talk of where was Dylan Rounds buried at? My question thrown into the conversation, how important is it? What's the significance behind the location within the case, considering Dylan Rounds had been found, recovered, brought home, and closure was, given to the family, and justice moving forwards as well. That's what we're going to be looking at today. Few questionable people out there that, well, I can't say it personally because it'll only be thrown back in my face in an unrealistic way. But what other people would say is there are still people obsessed and glued to Dylan Rounds. I would argue that there is a difference between being focused on the case of Dylan Rounds. That's completely different to being focused about Dylan Rounds on a more personal level. And I think that's what we've seen with time within the community and further afar, whether it be YouTubers, people who have channels, and maybe some audience members, the way they talk about Dylan Rounds, whether they know them or not, the information that they have, whether it's right or wrong, tends to be wrong or exaggerated. Over time, there seems to be like a personal tone to it when talking about Dylan. Now, as you know, when I do my videos and coverage, it's not on a personal level because one, I'm not emotionally connected in a delusional, blinded way. And number two, I'm trying to understand the case and learn about it with time. And depending how long the case goes on for and what information is coming out, it can determine how many videos that are made on one's channel. And in this situation, the Dylan Rounds case had gone on for over 2 years or so. So it meant 2 years worth of making videos, learning about the latest news, the theories and ideas in between, right? So the word obsessed or obsession would be very invalid there, because the reason why one covers a case and makes so many videos is because there is so much to talk about and there is constantly new information coming out with time, and maybe more so in the past there was, and then past that point more so reflecting back on things and clearing up stuff along the way, like a cleanup job. I mean, another channel which I guess does the same thing but on a different case would be a person called Michelle After Dark. I don't follow them, but I've seen them pop up every once in a while, such as on YouTube or on certain pages, right, with other cases. I guess the example would be the Sebastian Rogers one. Michelle After Dark creating several videos on that case because there's different things to talk about, to learn about, and to make sense of. Fine. And that's been outlined and explained by Michelle. That's good. Just like how when I've done my coverage on Dylan Rounds, it's to keep the case alive for as long as it's needed. And if there's valid things to be talked about, whether it be at the start, midway through, or right now, then that's what needs to be done. A cleanup job has occurred at times when it's needed. Get rid of confusion or any misinformation, tie up any loose ends, which same thing I did in the Kenny Veach case and also in recent time with some sub-mysteries. You don't want things open-ended, especially if you do have an answer to close that chapter. You might as well close it because it will help yourself and it will help everyone else when moving forwards and looking at the next topic, point, or a different case depending on where things are at currently. And with the Dylan Rounds case, as said, the closure has come about for family. Dylan Rounds has been found. Brenner with the plea deal. Brenner the one responsible. What's the big deal? What's wrong now? And it seems like there's a range of people out there with disgruntled looks on their face or their tone of voice in a bit of a negative way. I guess they don't like the outcome. They don't like the way it's gone. They think that there is more to the story than what meets the eye. Well, maybe with time, with patience, more things will come out, right? It's like with other areas in the case. It took time, but it eventually came out. Now, for me, to give my point on the matter, it would be good, it would be nice to know the burial site location, or it be the specific coordinates or a rough location given, but somewhat accurate enough, just to get a better idea, to get a better understanding, to learn about the case and how things played out, right? But I think other people out there who are fixated on the burial site and have an entitlement of demanding and wanting and needing to know, should they be given that information? I mean, the family know, but they don't want to reveal it just yet. Not because they're hiding it, just simply because they're still processing things, and the main focus is Dylan had been found and recovered. That's the most important thing. And, you know, there is a hierarchy to everything. And I think quite a few entitled people out there fail to understand that. Whether they are personally or they feel like they're connected with Dylan Rounds or not, they aren't Dylan Rounds. They aren't even the parents, and they're not even the friends of Dylan. So they don't have that much of a right to demand this or demand that. Okay, there might be some exceptions when it comes to some kind of public information or stuff you can get from court documents and trials and this and that, but within the Dylan Rounds case, that hasn't really come about yet. One interesting point to mention, supposedly that preliminary hearing starting on the 15th, the 16th, and possibly 17th, 2 to 3 days at last. That is supposedly still happening, at least from when I last checked. There's not been any additional updates since regarding it. So that supposedly is happening, but, you know, time will tell, of course, if there's any post made or any updates provided by East Idaho News. And that's like 2 days from now. So we'll see what happens there 2 days from now. We're in May. So when it gets to May 28th, that will mark the day, the month when, you know, Dylan Rounds went missing originally, but more so was killed. Obviously, years have passed now, but in terms of the month, in terms of the day, it's going to mark like a key moment, more of a negative tone in a way, because you're remembering what happened to Dylan and it wasn't a good thing. But we'll see if there's any news coverage, you know, any responses, interviews, maybe the family laying low just for now whilst moving on with other stuff and processing everything. So then when the day does come, whether it be that preliminary of Brenner or the actual day, the month of when Dylan was originally taken out, there might be some kind of like special coverage, special news report, reflection. We'll see what happens, of course. When the day does come, am I going to make a video about it? Well, it all comes down to, is there anything to actually talk about and look at? If there isn't, then there's no need to, right? It's like how when Michelle said, when covering the Sebastian Rogers case, if there's a specific thing to talk about on a particular day, then that's what will happen. And if there's nothing else to talk about, but there is at least one thing, then that's what needs to be the focus, whether it's talked about in short format or long format. And that's like exactly what I do with particular topics, themes, and events. And that's kind of what's happening today, right? It's understanding the importance, the significance behind the location of Dylan Rounds' burial site. And we're not talking about burial site like a graveyard, the final resting place of Dylan, right, by the family. We're talking about where Dylan Rounds was buried by the murderer, James Brenner, who was responsible for the desecration as well. And whilst the authorities know, and I guess the family does as well, not entirely sure, because how it was worded in the news articles and the breaking news, from what I can remember, Brenner led authorities to the location. He didn't lead the family, he led authorities. So then I guess Dylan was recovered, and then authorities shortly afterwards let the parents know about it. Did they reveal the location? I don't know. If they didn't, well then that's probably why the family haven't said anything just yet, because they haven't been told. But if they have been told, and maybe it seems more likely, possibly, I guess they're still processing everything. Why does there need to be a rush when the main thing has been resolved, which was returning Dylan Rounds home, bringing him back home. Isn't that the most important part? Yeah. Has it been achieved? Yeah. So what next? Whatever that needs to be done in the eyes of the family. And we've seen that with that non-profit organisation set up, Dylan Round's legacy expanded and helping other missing person cases. Because I guess one way to summarise it from the perspective of the parents, and maybe more so Candice Cooley, because she's been more vocal online, despite what's happened previous, but we're getting the closure of Dylan Rounds, their son, it's not like we'll drop tools now, we sit back now, fade off into the sunset. No, still playing an active role, but more so in a selfless way by helping other families out there with the Missing in America network and the other connections over there with the different cases, whether they be high profile or low profile, covering them all, trying to help with resources, awareness, information, and help in general. So in most cases, a family or a person with a missing loved one may eventually seek closure in some way or another, and then they may settle down or a fresh start, move forwards in life, but lay low. But that's not the case with Candice Cooley. I don't know about Justin Rounds because I don't hear about him much online. He might still be doing stuff, kind of like what Candice Cooley's doing, but I've not seen it mentioned online, so I can't say much there. But you could think in a normal or any other situation, Candice Cooley could just lay low now. What's been done has been done. Closure, move forwards, that's it, end of. Now, still passionate she is about missing person cases, networks, forming networks, helping other families. That's somewhat of a positive thing, right? Now, some people could throw it in and say, well, Candice Cooley wasn't all about this in the past. True. Well, that's because in the past, Dylan Rounds, their son, wasn't missing. So, and you'll see it with patterns just in general where a bad thing could happen to someone or a family and then they turn a negative into a positive and a long-lasting one, whilst honouring a person which may have been hurt, harmed or lost in the process, turning a negative into a positive, whilst honouring that individual and keeping the memory alive and then expanding on that by helping others out there. It's a process and it comes with experience. And I think a range of these different people, true crime, community, YouTube streets, whatever you want to call it, people out there, not everyone, but a couple here and there, don't quite grasp or understand that process and that concept, because not all of them have experienced the same situations themselves. Some may, there might be exceptions, but that lack of understanding because of lack of experience, okay? So I guess things are busy in the background and on top processing everything. Depending how true it is, how it was mentioned within the, or is it Box Elder Journal, what we looked at not too long ago, maybe a month or two, where it mentioned Cade Palmer, part of Box Elder County Sheriff's Office. Is he deputy? Can't quite remember, but he's within Box Elder, assigned to the Dylan Rounds case at the time, speaking on behalf of him by saying that because of the legal reasons and the way things are, not much can be talked about or revealed publicly just yet because of the implications it can have. So the plea details can't be made public of knowledge. So it still remains a little bit of a mystery there, but maybe with time down the line, get a better idea. It's just like a level of patience, right? Just like how it was in figuring out, has Dylan Rounds been found yet or not, and how long will it take? I mean, you know, you look at some people, Bob Farrell was very insistent that Dylan Rounds probably may be found in the next 5 years or so. Well, that didn't happen, did it? He was found sooner. There's many other people that doubted it and said that Dylan Rounds will never be found, but guess what? He was. So there you go. But maybe if people have followed many of the missing person cases, and it's not always resulted in a success rate. People have still been out there missing, supposedly. I can understand why people would have doubt in the case of Dylan Rounds. I've not covered that many missing people cases. I've spent time focused on the odd few, very focused, but I guess with not covering as many missing people cases, that expectation isn't the same as like everyone else's, where you don't expect much, or you may expect no outcome. But I don't think like that, because I've not covered lots of cases and become numb by it. None of that happens. So out of all the cases that I've looked at, right, in terms of success rate in missing person being found or remains being found in closure, Christine Passay Parker case, I covered that. She was found, remains, but closure was brought. Hobo shoestring, briefly covered that. Questionable community by some people, the way they were being very negative and toxic, which was unnecessary. But in terms of the hobo shoestring, missing person YouTuber was found, remains found, but closure. Okay. What other ones was there? I'm just trying to think. I think that's mainly it. Okay. The ones that I've covered probably longer would be Kenny Veach and Dylan Rounds. So 2 covered, 2 found or remains found, 2 covered, 2 remain, a bit of a mystery. Pretty decent results, that, in a way, right? But you will get many YouTubers out there that have covered many different cases, and obviously the success rate will be a lot lower, because the more cases you cover, the more chances there are of being unsolved and ongoing, and the success rate goes down. Now, at the end of the day, of course, all these people covering cases aren't the ones always primarily finding or responsible to finding the missing people. It's more so the coverage aspect. And I think there would be a purpose, a reason, explanation behind what you do. Should you have to explain yourself with what you do on YouTube and videos that you make? You do what you want to do and what you like and what you're interested in. Yeah, but I guess when people start causing trouble, what are the reasons behind that? Or what are the reasons behind why they're here in the very first place? And within the Dylan Rounds case, there are still people lurking and lingering around, some creators, some unsavory people, and it's trying to understand why they still here. Why? Is it because they didn't get what they wanted out of the case? Their ideas, which they turned into facts, or how they poorly worded it, came across that way, didn't come true. They can't let go. I mean, it's like similar when I've done other cases, a mystery, it's been solved, but people can't shake it off. They are still convinced that there is more to it. They're still convinced that it is unsolved when it has been solved, and there is evidence to say it has, but they can't admit it. They're in denial. And maybe that's what applies within the Dylan Rounds case community. Range of people here and there are in denial of the fact that Dylan was found and that Brenner was the one responsible. People can't accept that, so they're still sticking with the old tales, stories, and rumours. Even if they say it's just their ideas and their opinions, they say it like that, but all the other times they word it as a fact. So they've got poor management in wording and language, and it really doesn't help the situation. If people were very clear and specific from day one in what they think, what they believe, their opinion, and they made that very clear, it would be more understandable now, and there'd be a lot less conflict and tension. Now, hardly anyone's going to see this, I guess, relevant to the Kenny Veach case, but I'm just going to bring it up now because I can't be bothered making a separate video about it. I saw one comment recently on my channel to do the Kenny Veach case, and they were complaining, saying how, why are all the videos recently all about criticising and conflict and drama with other YouTubers in the Kenny Veach case? When you look back at my channel and you count the amount made, 2 to 3. 2 to 3 videos. How many videos have been done in recent time which are serious, focused, and away from drama? 8. That's within the last week or 2. 8 videos made on serious, important, meaningful topics, and 2 to 3 videos done on conflict. I think that's a pretty good ratio. But once again, people biased, with an agenda, selective hearing, selective eyesight, and they just pick out on the negatives and not acknowledge the positives which have been covered on my channel. Isn't that very typical, of course? So you got that in the background. There's still videos to make on the Kenny Veach case here and there. Just got to get the right time and focus to deliver it. No breaking news at this moment in time, in case anyone's wondering. If there is any background sound, that's just noise outside, nothing I can do about that. We still need to look at the little news article today. It's pretty short in length. Then I can talk about or expand on the importance, the location of Dillon Rounds. I can incorporate that with the map as well, okay? I think we'll go on to the news article right now. Here we are, KSL.com, title, Family of Dillon Rounds announces non-profit in his memory. So some of this information may be quite familiar to people because it was probably from the Facebook page post by Candice Cooley, but it's just looking at it from an outside perspective to see if they reported on it correctly or not. This was by Mark Jones, KSL TV, posted May 6, 2024 at 10:42 a.m. There's Dillon Rounds, Luce in Box Elder. The family of Dillon Rounds is creating a non-profit in his honour. Rounds was found on April 9th in a remote area in Box Elder County, according to Box Elder County Sheriff's Office. So it's within Lucin, Utah. Even though it doesn't mention Lucin, it was in Lucin, Utah. As I said, people, some are a little bit fixated on it and have expectations, entitlement that they need to know and that they should be told by the family. And the question's why the family are hiding it. Are they even hiding it? There's not enough proof of that, really. Now, quote, whilst we had hoped for a different outcome, we have known since the start Dillon was no longer alive. This recent development means the investigation has gone full circle and now we can finally bring Dillon home and close this chapter, the family said in a statement last week. The remains found were confirmed to be Dillon by the Utah Office of Medical Examiner. We found solace in knowing that Dillon was surrounded by a network of caring individuals who spared no efforts in the search for him, the statement read. Yes. Beacon, hope and support. In an effort to keep his memory alive, the Rounds family has created a non-profit organisation. In quotes, in the wake of this heart-wrenching experience, we have chosen to channel our grief into a positive force by creating Dillon's legacy. A non-profit organisation to help families in similar situations, the statement read, Dillon's legacy will serve as a beacon of hope and support for families navigating the distressing ordeal of a missing loved one and the frustration of getting authorities to act accordingly. So all the BS the family were put through, they're turning that all around and channeling it in the right way by helping others out who may be going through the same thing or about to. And it's about eliminating those problems. So on a lesser scale, but kind of links in a way, it's like what I've done on my channel within cases and communities, spreading awareness in times of BS with BS information and BS people, right? Knowing who is who, what to expect, and the patterns and behaviours and the traits from these individuals, so that those that do watch along and listen in, they can apply it themselves and then they can be better off in the future too, with whatever they may be dealing with. It says, through the non-profit, the family is hoping to provide resources, guidance and emotional support to those in a similar situation. In May 2022, Rounds was reported missing by family members after they were unable to contact him. Later that year, Brenner was identified as a person of interest in his disappearance. Brenner used to live on his family's property and worked with Rounds according to the Rounds family. Does it mention about friends? Nope, that's correct. On March 3rd, 2023, Brenner was charged with first-degree murder and desecration of a body, and evidence stacked against him too, as what we were told. So there's that there, in case anyone didn't catch up on it beforehand. Let's now focus on the main topic and add on with this video, the key subject, the location, the burial. With the use of Google Earth satellite maps, I can add on with my points. It makes it a little bit easier. Although we don't have the location, we are in the area, roughly speaking, as to where Dillon Rounds was found. His burial in a shallow grave, as we saw in recent time how it was worded. So we got a few little extra details, a shallow grave. So that kind of highlights Brenner's attitude in how he would do things, half-hearted, not making a hole deep enough, just shallow. That can bring its own questions and raise, well, maybe to some people's suspicion, how can Dillon Rounds be found so long after, and if it wasn't for Brenner, Dillon wouldn't be found still. And it was a shallow grave of all things. If it's a shallow grave, how come the full spectral drone didn't pick up when it came to soil disturbance? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, interesting. But let's just focus with my thoughts and opinions. Why does it matter? Why should it matter where Dylan Rounds was buried at if he's already been found and the closure has been retrieved and the family is a little bit better off now? Obviously, it's left a hole and a void, but there's closure now. Why should it matter about Dylan's burial? Why are other people so fixated on it? Is it because they think there's more to the story than what meets the eye? Well, to me, the reason why I think it's quite significant, but at the same time, I'm not demanding answers immediately, nor entitlement. It will come when the time is right. I think what people forget is the level of patience when it came to Brenner, right? Well, I mean, there's not much people could do about it because Brenner was, in Webber County Jail for some time and he wasn't really talking and not much was going on, and maybe the plea deal being rejected in the past, that was unfortunate. Things could have come sooner, but the talk reaching out, eventually a plea deal being made, over 2 years or so, it took some time, didn't it? But people were patient enough there, so patient that some gave up on hope and thought Brenner would never speak and he would take it to his grave, but eventually it did come out and closure was found. So if people can be so patient with Brenner, then why can't they be patient with Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, the family as a whole then? Why does it have to be so one-sided? There's no balance there. I don't know. A bit of hypocrisy. Oh yeah, it's okay for Brenner to drag things out. Yeah, we wouldn't expect much less or any more. Yeah, whatever happens. Oh, but the family, they should be telling us immediately right now. Why should the family have to tell the general public anything? At the end of the day, it's kind of like, at some point it's a personal matter, but then once you start reaching out to the general public, it's like sometimes you want the general public for help, but you're not willing to tell them on the news updates. It's kind of like, it's not quite give and take. Maybe some people are a bit frustrated from the past still when there was that time where the family reached out to the general public, like help, search, do stuff, but then afterwards kind of backed off and said, no, we don't want your help, we don't need it right now. And people felt offended by it and got triggered, so maybe there's that to take in consideration. That does look a little bit different now. It looks a bit more open than the last time we looked. How strange. Maybe it's just my eyesight. But I'm not like focusing anywhere specifically. I'm just hovering about the area just so you got things to look at whilst I'm narrating over. Okay, that's basically it. But, if it took so long for Brenner to speak, and that was for other ways and other reasons, then I'm sure the family should have at least a few months to take things in, to make sense of the situation. There are still things upcoming, the events, I guess, honouring Dylan Rounds in memory of Dylan Rounds, that event, as we saw. Do you call it an anniversary or what? The day of when Dylan Rounds went missing and murdered, that coming up. Supposedly the preliminary trial, hearing, whatever you want to call it, preliminary, with Brenner in 2 days' time. I mean, there are still events coming up, so maybe not everything can be talked about right now. Maybe when things have been processed and recovering from everything that's happened, and on top, once all the events are ticked off the list and it's a bit more open and free, more time, maybe that's when people will start talking. I mean, at the end of the day, even though Dylan Rounds is the main victim who's been caught up in all of this, the family and friends and some of us have suffered in the process because they miss Dylan Rounds. They've been impacted by the loss of Dylan. So why should they owe anyone a public explanation on the spot, right? I think most people understand, but the entitled ones don't, and they demand an answer right now. And because they're not getting one, they're throwing the toys out the pram, and now they're accusing the family of covering the case up and hiding information. But I wouldn't say there's enough proof of that to support that claim. Just because they haven't said anything yet, it doesn't mean to say they're hiding the location. And we do need to look at the odd post just to put it into perspective. It's okay me saying this, but there's other people that have said it themselves or demanded and shown that tone of voice. And we'll look at that very shortly. And that's to do with Bob Fowle, of all people, but even Jim Terry as well, with the same points made. So, entitlement. And like when it comes to reasoning behind why people get involved in a case, whatnot, as I said, keep a case alive, make sense of it, learn about it on the spot. And obviously people from the past and my community that I had at the time when going into a new case, so then they could learn in the process, right? Because, once you've got your channel, you've done your videos on whatever, and you've built an audience, your audience may want you, and you too, to go in a certain direction of a different topic, theme, or case. So then they can be taught and learn a new thing, and you go to a different area, right? And that's what you do. You've already got a reason, you've already got a responsibility, and then on top of that, new reasons can form. And for me, teach people about other cases and topics and mysteries, missing persons, and at the same time, keep a case alive, spread awareness, and everything was done there. Now, when it comes to someone like Jim Terry, it wasn't that long ago, Jim Terry said somewhere that originally he was assigned to the case to look back on Dylan Rounds, his history, the background details behind Dylan Rounds, not to search for Dylan Rounds, not to figure out where he is or who's responsible, not to bring the closure or solve the case. In that sense, it was just the background work, the past of Dylan Rounds. That's what Jim Terry said. So that doesn't really come into play now because of the way the case has gone and closure, and yet still lingering about, which is a bit odd. Yeah. And as well, when you get a person such as Jim Terry fired as a private investigator from that case, assigned to, fired, told to walk away, and yet goes against the wishes of the family and continues covering it on and off, I don't know, doesn't seem right, that. I mean, I've not been in that situation. I've not been caught in it before. I've never been told to walk away from a case, at least from, official people. That's never happened because things are done, in a controlled way, I guess. You get some random people online claiming to be this and that will tell you to step back or step away, but are they the authority? No. Are they within the case? No. So they're just a random person talking. Oh, well, it's just their opinion. So that's why I've continued covering the case, because there's not been reasons to walk away in that sense. Other people have walked away for numerous reasons, but still things to cover and talk about. Me personally, when it comes to the whole talk about the location of Dylan Rounds, I'd say it's important and interesting to know, just to get an idea and sense of how far away is it from Dylan's farm or the Grangeshed property, right? Because the odd lingering story, which was never really cleared up, and that's very unfortunate, is the Grangeshed property. When you had the deal with, on the 28th of May 2022, just after 3 p.m, a Jubilee truck seen leaving the Grangeshed property. That would have been after Dylan's death on the day, and it would have been at a time when Brenner was going to Don Hatley's. So what was the whole reason behind that, or purpose? That was never really resolved. Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds didn't really acknowledge it either, even when the likes of Weezer reached out to Candice Cooley. It was kind of brushed aside. Very unfortunate. Maybe there's not much importance or significance behind it, but it would have been nice just to either reinforce it within the case or debunk it, and that never happened, and it's a shame. But if it can be brought up again into discussion, then I'll do that. And like how I told you about it, was if we do get the information on the autopsy report, which hasn't happened yet, but if we ever did, then we get an idea of cause of death and what was used. And does it link to Brenner? Does it link to the time-lapse footage? Because you see Brenner cleaning a gun in his trailer, and that's just after Dylan's death. Was that gun used in the murder of Dylan Rounds? And if so, whose was it, Brenner's or Dylan's? Right? If we knew the autopsy report, we could possibly link it with one another or debunk it, and then that would help clear things up there. And when it comes to the Jubilee truck leaving the Grangeshed property, heading down that way towards Sun Tunnels and passing some visitors in the area known as Walter Michelle at the time, If that Jubilee truck was going in a certain direction towards the area of where Dylan Rounds had been found much later, you could link one thing with the other. Maybe that Jubilee truck was transporting Dylan somewhere. You never know. But will we ever know? I don't know. It could take some time. If the family know all this, that's at least a good thing in a way. At least someone knows. You want to be positive on a basic level. But would the family be willing to reveal this and that? I mean, in the past they've revealed stuff. Kenneth Cooley has. What was the last thing publicly revealed though that was of importance? Personally, I can't quite remember. The only thing that comes to my mind was at the end of 2023 with the whole cadaver dogs and evidence found. Never revealed as to what it was, but DNA evidence found, and it was new. Two pieces of new DNA evidence, and one of which was found by the dog, a dog, canine. So things have come out, just there's a bit of a delay in between, because I think people forget there is a hierarchy as well when it comes to cases and crime or missing people. You got the authorities that find out information likely first, with the exception of witnesses knowing it before the police do, and then pass it on to the police when there's interrogations or questioning. But it tends to be the authorities at the top. Then that information, they may process it, they may publish it, they may reveal it somehow, but at different timed intervals. The first people that tend to know about it would be such as the family or friends, those within the case, in which their loved one had been impacted, so they get told the news first, or they should do most of the time. And then the family may choose to reveal it publicly, or at the same time, the police will do it themselves. So there is a delay, there is an order, there is a hierarchy, and that's how it should be. The family should find out first before the general public do. Now, what happens if the family want to gatekeep information? Has that happened in the Dylan Rounds case? I wouldn't really say so, because things were revealed eventually and explained. Maybe in other cases it's different. I guess maybe some people want to withhold information from the public if the police are okay with that, because it could be sensitive or they want privacy. But one of those balancing acts, you want privacy, but you reach out to the general public for help at the same time, so you kind of like turn the tap on and off, hot and cold, when you want and when you don't. Yeah, I can understand there'd be frustration from the general public in a situation like that. I get that. But I just say there's a process behind it all. I personally think that it would be interesting and of value to know and learn where Dylan Rounds was buried at, right? To measure the distance, how far away is it from point A to point B? Was there anything of interest within the area? Was it an area that I looked at in the past on the maps? How far away was I from it? It's a way of learning and understanding, putting things into perspective. I did say in the past that maybe some things wouldn't come out if it was on the basis of searches were done and they somehow weren't able to find Dylan there, even though he was there, and they felt embarrassed by that and they wanted to avoid criticism. But there's not enough proof to support that point made at the moment. That's just like a theory, an idea, that's all. I want to know your thoughts on the matter there. But as for the entitled people out there, that some of them think that it's not being talked about public because they might be in on it, or they know more, or they had the chance in the past to reveal that location and chose not to. So, a bit of scepticism going on. Maybe to set the record a bit clearer, use another case study from once again, another individual, or the same individual. It's a bit typical, but, it's to do with Dylan Rounds, and when it's to do with Dylan Rounds, I cover it, so it should be covered. So, I'll just go on that post now. So it appears once again on Bob Farrell's community page, several different posts about all kinds of things, Bob Farrell going on and on and on. We don't need to look at all the other stuff because it's irrelevant for today. We're just looking at the things relevant to the Dylan Rounds case and what Bob Farrell has had to say recently. So one of them, 5 hours ago, Bob says, "You idiots out there, I don't give two rats ass what you say and feel. I don't give a damn about what Dylan Rounds' parents want and don't want, and none of you will know when I'm going or when I'm there. You all will after I visit, so eat, beep, and die." So that's really positive advice there from Bob Farrell. Bob Farrell has already told Warlike Ref to commit suicide in one way or another. And now Bob Farrell is now telling other people to die. See, this is what I mean. This is just simply the self-destruction of an individual. They keep digging themselves into a hole. Bob Farrell has said a lot of questionable things in recent time. So even if the odd, strange or odd thing was mentioned in the past, it wasn't to the same scale or frequency as it is now. So Bob isn't really doing himself any favours, but at the same time, he claims he doesn't care, but he does care enough to keep on going round the cycle. And a few times now, Bob Farrell has admitted that he likes drama, he likes conflict, and whilst, yeah, it can be seen as a form of entertainment, if you're dragging it in or doing it in the name of Dylan Rounds, then that's a little bit disappointing, especially if a person like them claims to care about Dylan Rounds and wants to show respect and honour in the name of Dylan Rounds. Doing this type of stuff is not honouring Dylan, it's more so disrespecting the case and making a mockery out of things. So it's interesting how Bob Farrell will do what he wants, when he wants, even if Dylan Rounds' parents don't want him to do. And what's that got anything to do here? Like, what's it on about? Well, it was elaborated in a video recently, but Bob Farrell going on about wanting to visit Dylan Rounds' grave. Not the burial site of where he was buried at by Brenner, but the actual grave. So like, whether it be a graveyard, a headstone, actually going to Dylan's grave, right? Whether his body is in that grave or ashes, depending the situation. What, going to pay respect? No. Even Bob Farrell mentioned it himself, why he would go, and it's not to pay respect for Dylan Rounds, it's just to piss other people off online who are very protective of Dylan Rounds. Now, at the end of the day, going to a public grave, if that's where Dylan is, if it's public, well then really anyone can go and, just go and visit and look at it. But in terms, you want to talk about morally speaking, what's the motive behind why you're going there? That's what should be most important. Even if you're allowed to visit a place, a location, whether it's sacred or not, or it's a sensitive area or to do with a sensitive topic event from the past with a person, a victim, for example. Are you going there to pay respect? Are you going there in a neutral way to learn about something, educational reasons, or are you going to cause trouble? And that's what Bob Farrell is demonstrating here. We can elaborate that later, but let's look at the original post by Bob here. Bob says, do you all really think that they can keep Dylan's grave site quiet? Hell no. There are so many people that can't stand Candice Cooley that someone out there will be willing to tell. They may stay quiet for now, but money buys anything these days. Information and money go hand in hand. The LE do it every day, paying people for information. I'm sure of her friends will tell. They're acting like Dylan is a well-known famous person by hiding it right now. Makes me laugh. He's just a kid. No one is going to harm his resting place. God damn. So, it seems to be more so tilted towards the actual grave of Dylan Rounds. But Bob Farrell was also talking about the original burial site as well. Where did it happen? And then bringing Kurt Wadsworth's name into the mix of it all. And Bob Farrell referencing, and Jim Terry also saying it as well, that, the likes of Candice Cooley, the family, they're not revealing the location where Dylan Rounds was found by the authorities when Brenner led them to there. Why they're not revealing it public? They must be hiding it because they're responsible. They're in on it. There's a form of corruption, blah, blah, blah. I said, at the end of the day, it took, over 2 years for Brenner to speak and for a plea deal to be made at least. It took over 2 years, 2 years of patience. Why can't the family have a few months in just processing it all? Why should the family have to owe the general public anything when the closure has already been brought now and most people are satisfied with how the case has gone? Can't the family just take it in? Can't the family spend some time doing whatever they need to do, decompress, whatever? Because, as you know, It seems to be contradictions after contradictions. People in the past having a go at Candice Cooley more so for the lack of emotions displayed in interviews and saying how the act's so calm and cool, collective, that they should be crying, they should be upset, they should be doing this and that, but Candice Cooley was holding it together for over 2 years. And what now? Because maybe they finally let the emotions out, or the decompressing now, taking it all in. Now they're being criticised for that. Well, that's a situation of you damned if you do, damned if you don't. It'll be considered a lose-lose situation. I can understand why certain emotions won't be displayed at the time, because one, you may react differently compared to other people, and two, you want to be able to hold it together, because if you don't, it'll be harder to make sense of what's going on and hard to move forwards with whatever the outcome is. And if there's other people around, it's one of those situations where you at least want one person to be somewhat level-headed and stable, because if one goes, they all go, and it's like a domino effect. You need at least one leader, not literally, but someone that can at least lead in, whether it be common sense or bit of balance. It's kind of like a microcosm with the Dylan Rounds community, YouTube streets, true crime community. You need at least one person that's somewhat balanced, neutral, takes it from different perspectives, because if you don't, it's just a complete war zone, conflict, mess, and we see that tirelessly. That's why it's important that I step in here and there with the different cases or situations, and it makes a bit more sense of things. But at least what's mentioned here, the demand and we need to know where Dylan Round's grave site is as well. Besides the burial by Brenner on Dylan, we need the location of that. We also need the location of where Dylan Round's buried at. Can't you give him a moment's peace? Can't you give the family a moment's peace? Why is there such a rush? Why is there such urgency? You know what I'm saying? Such urgency all of a sudden now to rush and flock here and there in the name of Dylan Rounds. Is it really in the name of Dylan Rounds? Not really, because up here, Bob's saying, I don't care what the parents think, I'm going, regardless. Right. Comment-wise, why not? Let's just take a quick look at these, see what shows up. Days of YouTube liars. I think you spelt that wrong. Or whatever, I don't know what the fuck. Anyway, this person, Days, says his parents don't want you, Bob, to know. You have no right to know. You're the only creepy person making big arse post online constantly about a young boy that you have no right to. You did not know. You keep trying to act like you know something about it. You came on the same lion acting like you were a cop, and you've constantly been jealous of Jim Terry. Bob responds, go suck an egg. Interesting. Boiled or scrambled? I mean, all I would say, Bob Farrell demonstrates an obsession on a personal level with Dylan Rounds by previously having Dylan Round's profile picture, almost like an impersonation or some kind of mural of Dylan Rounds, but almost like pretending to be him, but not literally. Even if it was out of respect and honouring Dylan Rounds, as said, I think Dylan Rounds would be extremely disappointed in Bob Farrell, for his actions, how he's handled and dealt with the case himself, and Bob's mentality and attitude, and more so in recent time, Bob doing this and that or saying this and that isn't for or in the name of Dylan Rounds, it's actually against Dylan Rounds. Because Bob Farrell seems more focused on what the general public think on what Bob does next to do with the Dylan Rounds case, not what Dylan Rounds would actually think of the whole situation. So, yeah. So, creepy person. I mean, Bob Farrell isn't doing himself any favours at all, okay? With the lines he's come out with and some of the questionable things he said, he's coming across as a strange, a slightly creepy individual. That might sound rude, but personally, well, not personally, honestly, he's not doing himself any favours with what he says online, okay? Next one. they don't act like he's a well-known famous person, which he is now, and people all over the world know who he is. They act like creeps and people that are entitled to think that they are somebody they don't want you to know. Go bake some cookies. Okay, great response there. Is Dylan Rounds a famous person? No. Is Dylan Rounds known, though, by a range of people with time? Yeah, but when it comes to missing person cases, it's not like the matter of someone becoming famous. That's not how it works. Becoming known, right? Famous. I don't know. I think the term famous is used in the wrong context here, to be honest. Normally, famous is when someone may be acknowledged or discovered for inventing something or making an important discovery, but maybe with their passing never acknowledged, but then in the future brought to light, and then they became famous and well known for that. What was Dylan Rounds famous and well known for? Being a farmer. But, in the eyes of Dylan, probably being humble, he'll say, I'm just a farmer like all the other farmers out there. Why should I be put on a pedestal, right? The case of Dylan Rounds, you can say, is somewhat high profile, or was at a point, just like the Idaho 4 case, the Kylie Rodney case, and, things along the way like that, Gary Petito. It's not about the missing person or the victim becoming famous. That's poor wording that. It's just the person becoming known, or the case in general becoming high profile. It's not like a celebrity game or any of that BS. Yeah. Is this Casey? They don't want you to visit his gravesite, Bob. Please respect their feelings. Bob, don't worry about it. How many missing person graves have you visited? Or more? Being sarcastic. They don't like you. If I were you, I would not go anywhere near the place. Dylan is not there, Bob. That's just bones. You're not me. Go screw off. So, Bob has it in his mind what he wants and what he's going to do. I don't know what that photo is. Don't really care to know. Yeah, pretty much that. I saw another point mentioned in which Bob Farrell, and whether it was said in a joking way or not, or just simply, to trigger some of his haters out there, he was going to go to Dylan Round's grave site, where it's like a public graveyard or something, and take photos of the headstone, the grave, and take selfies. Why would anyone do that? I mean, that's the equivalent of going to Auschwitz, the death camp, going to the gas chambers, and taking a selfie and smiling. It's just disrespectful. It's very unnecessary. I mean, it's common with younger people and, and even millennials nowadays to take selfies at a scene of a crime or a car crash, to just stare and watch, laugh, joke around, even if a person's walking on a broken ankle and then it snaps and the bone comes out and it's just, oh, never mind, haha, take a photo. It's unnecessary. Whether it be an active event or something to do with the past and you're going there, it may not be a form of desecration, but it's still kind of rude, Is it ever normal to take a photo of a grave? I mean, if it's for educational reasons or because it's like an interesting grave, it's done out of pure interest, maybe, or someone and that's why you've done it. But when it comes to Bob Farrell, the main motives and reasons behind what Bob Farrell says or does, or if he actually does it depends if he follows with his actions, but let's just say he does this and that, and he is going to go to the grave of Dylan Rounds. He's not doing it for Dylan. He's not honouring or paying respect to Dylan, because the first thing that was mentioned by Bob as for why he would go there is just to annoy people who are online, because he has haters and he knows by doing this or doing that it will annoy them, and he finds it entertaining. So he's putting first his own entertainment and gain from it by going to the Dylan Rounds grave, something which he claims to care about so much in the past, Dylan Rounds himself. And yet Bob Farrell has his priorities set elsewhere. It's not a good look on him, and I'm sure Dylan Rounds would be deeply disappointed with Bob Farrell and maybe even embarrassed. Now, that's the biggest shame in this whole case and situation, because of what's happened to Dylan Rounds. It's not like Dylan can tell the story himself. And most certainly, Dylan Rounds isn't able to even defend himself. And that's the biggest shame there. And it does apply to many other people in cases out there. When they're gone, people can say whatever and do whatever, almost like behind their back, and not much can be done in defense. And that is a shame. Yeah. So there's really not much more to say, to be honest. You can leave your thoughts down below. I think people that demand the location of Dylan's grave seem a tad bit obsessed on a personal level in an unnatural way. There's no need for urgency, you know. I just don't understand. It just seems a bit weird, because most of these people, if not all, don't know Dylan Rounds, neither on a personal level nor have ever been around him. So why did they care so much, and why do they care so much now, and why are they so focused on it? I said, some people, because they've got the priorities set elsewhere for other reasons, even if it's bad. And just to highlight once again, when it comes to the family, they might not say anything right now, but, you know, they might say something in the future, or maybe the police will. You know, if there's a matter of patience, right? You know, some of these people were quite insistent on contributing to a lot of disruption in the case, telling a load of BS stories and rumours and stating them as facts, whilst at the same time saying how, well, you know what, at the end of the day, we'll just see what happens with time and what the court says, because that's where all the real information comes out. So nothing matters right now at this moment. We'll just wait till the court, the trial and all that. So why are you still adding on your own BS then? If you honestly believe that the end result is the most important part, and that's when all the information comes out, such as the court trial, then there is really no point in actively participating in cases then, until it comes to the end. Like, when it comes to me, there is news coming out with different cases, and when it comes to the cold cases, well, sitting back isn't going to do anything, because there won't be a resolve there. There is a difference there, but the ongoing, the active cases, you know, sometimes it can be a waiting game. It just depends how information is processed and how often it comes out. In the Dylan Rounds case, it came out reasonably well in the early days, and then with time it got quieter, it became more thin, but that's just how the process went, and here we are right now. But some people unable to move on from the reality of the Dylan Rounds situation and the results of it. Some people still feel that there is more to the story than what meets the eye, but they don't actually have enough evidence themselves. So it's just a form of denial, I guess. It's a form of denial. They don't like that they're wrong. They don't like that the story's gone or maintained in its original trajectory, direction. So they're kind of grasping at straws now and kind of scuttling around in desperation. My question is, these type of people, will they ever move on from Dylan Rounds? And if they do, what case will they look at next and cause trouble with? I wonder. As I said, maybe some of the names, faces which have gone quiet since. I mean, I still find it interesting how when it comes to Don Hatley's place of living, people failed to give out the location. And even Taylina refused to give the location, yet supposedly all along it was publicly viewable. It was just within the Dylan Rounds documentary, so why did we have to keep it a secret then? I mean, I only found out about it, I don't know, not that long ago, because a viewer reached out to me about it, right? If I knew about it earlier on, I would have covered it as soon as possible. As you know, well, you can't see everything all at once. People see things at different times, and when you come together, it can help one another out. But to say, oh, I can't reveal the location because, you know, this reason and that reason, and yet it was public to begin with, that's just weird. And gone quiet since, that says a lot. And obviously with Corey as well, with that situation, you know, yapping on. been quiet since, typical because of the way the case has gone. See what I mean? The only thing that comes out about these cases, not always, but the only positive that comes out of these cases towards the end is it kind of shuts up people, especially those that have run their mouths for quite some time. I mean, who else? I mean, you got Ty Corbyn moved on to the search for Aidan Clune. Some people were saying that Ty Corbyn was ordered by the family to move away from the Dylan Rounds case or search. If that really was the case, I'm surprised, considering how... Was it Ty Corbyn himself directly, or was it more so Lance Kelly? I mean, they were both still searching at the time separately, so I guess it could apply to both, but I do remember Lance Kelly at least mentioning how, you know, even if the family don't want, I'm going to still keep searching and trying. And I think that's what Ty Corbyn said, or just did himself in terms of actions. So interesting how one was ordered to step away. And this, I believe, was at the time before Dylan Rounds was found, the burial site. Humans. Very interesting humans. I think with most true crime cases and just missing person cases, there is conflict, and the only reason why it's important to address those problems, especially when it's within a case, just so other people know the situation. That's mainly it. If there is conflict and it's outside of a case and there's no appliance at all, then it shouldn't matter at all. So that shouldn't really matter. Apologies if there was any distractions throughout this video. It's just idiots outside and noise outside. It does get very annoying. You know, I'm trying to do my thing. I'm trying to focus, and there's dickheads about. But then again, in real life, online, it's no different. There's always forms of disruption when it comes to humans, okay? So I think we'll leave it there for now. If it wasn't made quite clear, for whatever reason, when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case, okay, the burial site, the importance behind it is how far away and the distance between locations of interest, and possibly why wasn't he found earlier? Besides that plea deal, because to be honest, Brenner was the key to the location. You take that out of the equation, Dylan would still be missing right now. So it's described as a shallow grave, which you think, well, if it's shallow, then maybe a drone could detect it for like soil disturbance. Then why didn't that happen previously then? And once you know the location, then you get a better idea of how far away and how remote. And if it's an area that was never searched before by the family, well, then that's understandable as to why they didn't come across Dylan sooner. If they were willing on searching that area in time, then they may have come across Dylan Rounds. It just would have took longer. As said, you can call it educational, learning the facts, the full story, the complete story. And at this moment in time, it remains uncompleted, but maybe eventually more things do come out, but not everything can be rushed. And considering that people were patient in the past, why can't they be patient now? Maybe for some, it might just be the excitement of the closure and thinking, wow, it's actually happened now. Whoa, people getting too ahead of themselves and demanding this and that, when in the past, they weren't as demanding. And then again, somewhere, regardless. So let's just leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, found it somewhat interesting. Maybe tomorrow I can just do some discussions with the plea deal, just some tying up of loose ends there, because there was that forum page, was it Crime Watchers or Crime Stoppers, where people hang out and talk, and it was to Dylan Rounds, and we looked at it in the past. There's some new post since, could just catch up there, see the reactions from people, any discussions, because with discussions some questions can come out which I've never thought of myself, and it could put things into a different perspective. So maybe I'll try and cover that tomorrow. I just want to see what people think about it. If you do want to see another Dylan Rounds video, just let me know in general, okay? And I said, this video was done on a key theme and topic. Bob Fowl interjected himself within the case of Dylan Rounds once again. Questionable behaviour, a little bit dodgy, a little bit obsessive, kind of unnecessary, and demanding entitlement and jumping the gun once again, a bit like Jim Terry as well. It's unfortunate, but it's happening. People are still latched on, people are still obsessed with the case for the wrong reasons. It's not really doing much good in general. So We'll see what happens next. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night for now.